Hello. So as Claudia said, my name's Hannah. I am the Outdoor Recreation Officer for Moreton Bay Regional Council. If I talk too fast, please let me know. I am notorious for talking fast in these things. So as Claudia pointed out, I'll be talking to you about our outdoor recreation plan. So a little bit of context and background for you. So our outdoor recreation plan is one of our key strategic documents which resulted from our overarching open space planning strategy, which was released in 2012. There were three strategies that were recommended out of this. One was for urban planning, one was for sports and traditional sports, and then the other one was outdoor recreation, which is this project that we've got here. In 2017, we engaged Ross Planning, who worked with us and our stakeholders and peak body groups and stuff to develop the outdoor recreation plan. So looking into it a little bit more in depth, the outdoor recreation plan, the purpose behind it was to really influence the strategic direction for outdoor recreation infrastructure in the Moreton Bay region. We wanted to analyse the gaps in provision to make sure that we're addressing the needs for current uses in outdoor recreation and also the future uses of it. As we understand, it is a very rapidly growing industry that we've become more aware of recently. Specifically, we'll be looking at the infrastructure requirements, looking at supporting infrastructure. So we're not trying to create big, massive behemoth pieces of infrastructure that support the activity. We want to take a soft engineering approach and see how we can support the activities without a huge amount of infrastructure investment. But most importantly, one of the things we'll be looking at is balancing that demand for outdoor recreation activities, particularly access to these natural areas, and balancing the environmental and conservational values of these areas. Unfortunately, the more pristine and untouched these areas are, the more desirable and appealing they are for our outdoor recreational users. So the plan was informed heavily through some stakeholder consultation. So we spoke to peak body organisations, user groups, and we also reached out to just community users in general. We also reached out and looked at the state and federal planning policies as well around outdoor recreation. So a really good example of that is Mountain Biking Australia and their Queensland mountain biking strategy. So the priorities of the outdoor recreation plan, sorry, I put too many animations on here. The priorities of the outdoor recreation plan is to establish clear communication channels. So this is both internal and external of council. So we really want to make sure we get a complete holistic approach to this outdoor recreation development. So we want to work cross departments within council, and we want to work with partnerships of other organisations and agencies outside of council. We really want to ensure that due diligence and compliance is carried out before we establish any of these infrastructures that we're looking at. Obviously providing input into the strategic direction and also the user group liaison and management. So one of the things that you probably already heard a lot about with outdoor recreation is managing the use of these areas and promoting positive behaviours while discouraging those negative behaviours. So the scope of the outdoor recreation plan, it covered a lot of activities, but basically we summarised it into four main categories, which was water, track, aviation and climbing. You can see like a list of the different activities that we've kind of covered over there. It's really important to note that for this particular plan, it wasn't emphasised, or it didn't actually include motorised recreation. So trail bike riding, forward driving. It was identified that there's a unique management style and strategy that is needed for these activities that is not necessarily aligned with the passive recreation activities. It is worth noting some of the activities have influence from motorised rec. So for example, paragliding, you might need a plane to get up, but the actual paragliding itself is a fairly low impact activity. So just to give you a really brief, I'm not going to go through this the whole thing, but just a really brief background. So obviously we've gone through the normal process of council of making sure that we've done all the community consultation, the workshops, we've gone through the drafts and revisions, making sure that we've ticked all of those boxes to make sure that we've got a really well balanced document and strategy that we've resulted up with. So some of the key findings that we've established from this one, one of the really interesting one was that a lot of the outdoor recreation activities that happen in Moreton Bay don't actually happen on Moreton Bay managed land. So this really highlights that need that we need to partner with our other agencies to make sure that we've got that really cross-department and really balanced approach to how we manage outdoor recreation. We also identified that the three main activities were bushwalking, mountain biking and horse riding. This is pretty consistent with the Australian average. So walking is currently the #1 physical activity in Australia, and in Moreton Bay, a large proportion of our population, this is their preferred activity of choice. It is worth noting that the water sports, individually, it doesn't make that much of a big number, but when we combine them all, so kayaking, canoeing, fishing, swimming, when they're all combined together, it actually does make a fairly large chunk of the activities that happen in our region, particularly with our long coastline. We've got lots of creeks and rivers as well. So that actually, when you combine them, they're actually higher than horse riding and mountain biking. So some of the key opportunities that we've identified through this plan was that there is a lack of information and availability of the sites. So we looked at doing the signage. So obviously this is about promotion of sites, but it's also about educating people on etiquette of appropriate behaviour on sites, and also informing them of some of the really cool information about the cultural heritage, the environmental or the conservational values of the area. We looked at trailheads as well, so establishing water and land points where we can kind of create these, in layman's terms, we wanted to make a node so that, as we were saying, more people that go to a space that can disrupt the environmental and the positive attributes of the site. So if we can create almost like a sacrificial node where a lot of the people are parking their cars or doing this infrastructure, building this infrastructure that can kind of centralize that use, and then the rest of the site can have less impact. So obviously parking ties into that, and trails. So establishing new trails throughout the region, linking existing trails and finding those gaps in the network so that people are not making their own paths through existing environmental areas. So currently what we've already started to do in our council is we're currently working on our signage strategy suite. We are developing a DSS and infrastructure requirements for both water-based and land-based trailheads. We have a list of sites that we'll be doing some site investigation specific planning for, and we also are working on our trail network strategy, which is really looking at the different areas in our region and how we can disperse the use so we don't have that over densification in one area, and we can ensure that there are no gaps in that network. So this is where it becomes really interesting. It's probably the most relevant to what we were talking about today is our management and partnership recommendations for the plan. So the first one is obviously internal, which is in council. So this is establishing our outdoor recreation working group. So this is trying to take a really holistic approach and making sure that all the different departments within council are working together so we can get a really balanced outcome. Once we've established that, we'll be looking at creating a land managers forum, which is actually inviting other agencies, governing bodies, landowners to actually come in and contribute to that planning stage in the high level zones. This way we can make sure that we've got everyone's priorities and values all on the table before we start getting down into that detailed level of planning. And then once we've done that, we will actually be looking at creating an outdoor recreation forum. So this will be a public platform where people from peak body organisations, user groups or users themselves just from the community can actually come along once or twice a year and contribute to their own planning for their own activities in their region. So essentially what this will look like is we'll start from the bottom and work our way up, and then the reason that we're doing this is so that we can manage the users and so we can continue to manage event uses and manage the, continue partnerships with other company and liaising with user groups. So the outcomes from this is to provide support to our clubs and our user groups, to integrate user arrangements, investigate private sector support. So we'll be looking at commercial opportunities in the region, establishing volunteer groups to make sure that management of the land, we want to give ownership to the user groups as well. We don't want to take sole responsibility. We do want to be encouraging our users to take ownership of the site and look after and self-police it for themselves. And then obviously we will be looking to manage that use of the balance between recreational use and the values of the land itself. Just to give you an idea of the level of due diligence and planning that will be going into each of the site, I'm not going to go through this, just so you know, is more just to give you an idea. So we have actually been thinking really hard to make sure that we are ticking all of these boxes and we're investigating all of these before we start looking at putting infrastructure on the ground. There's a really heavy focus obviously on our environmental planning and our cultural heritage within our council that we'll be looking to work with. So with that internal working group that we were talking about, we do have like some purpose and priorities of that one. Obviously, the first one is that maintenance and conservation, providing new trails throughout the region, provision of the supporting infrastructure like we've been talking about. We do want to look at activating these sites in a positive way. So we'll be looking at providing programs like Moreton Bay's Healthy and Active. And then through this process as well, we can actually educate people on how to properly use sites. A lot of the negative behaviour that we've come to know at a lot of these sites can actually just come from ignorance. I'm an outdoor recreation person in my background, and I know that until I worked for council, there was actually a lot of grey area that I just didn't even know was a consideration. So if we can educate our general population on how to use sites well, this can improve the overall outcome of the area. Thanks, I've got to hurry up. Promotion and activation, and also managing unauthorised use. So working with our regulatory services to address some of those issues throughout the region. So just moving on to the next steps. So obviously we need to formalise our internal working group, and then we're going to reach out to our partners and other governing agencies to establish that land managers forum. And we need to work on a delivery framework, which we've already started. So any questions?
Can you give some examples of people not using sites properly?
Yes. Yes, I've actually spent my Monday out hiking on a site that wasn't used properly. Mountain biking is a large area in our region where we have a lot of unlawful use, simply because people are getting really skilled in their chosen discipline, and the offer of experience does not satisfy their skill needs anymore. It doesn't offer enough development, so then they start making their own tracks. We have one particular site at Clear Mountain where we actually have unexploded objects in the ground, and they're building their own trails through the area. So this is just an example of how we really need to get on top of this and manage the use, and be understanding the demand in the market to know what kind of infrastructure they are looking for, so that we can get on top of it and manage this kind of behaviour.
Thank you very much.